Welcome, everyone, to the DisRupted podcast by the Dr. Matteo Franco. I always say that everyone's one disruption away from a better experience of this thing called life, whether we're stuck, happy where we're at, and looking for more. We're always with just one disruption, one interaction away from a whole different experience of this thing called life. If you're listening to this, don't forget to go to YouTube at the Teo TV, all lowercase, and like and subscribe for the video experience. Let's get to it. All right. Welcome, everyone. We are back for another episode with Rick. We're going into Thanksgiving week, so we know all the crazy stuff going on with people being just crazy with Black Friday coming up, being around our family, friends, just the stress that can come with the holidays if we don't prepare correctly. But excited to have you back on. Thank you.
Great to be here. Looking forward to another episode. They fly by fast. Before I know it, it's been 45 minutes and we're done, and I have more to say.
Yes. And I'm super excited for you. I know I'm excited to dive in our first episode. If you guys want to know more about Rick, you can go back to episode 0, the origin episode. Maybe that's what the 0 stands for, is the origin episode. So, and we'll dive into that as we go through today's podcast too. But if you want to get to know Rick and more of his backstory a little bit more, you can go to that episode as well. But we're going to kind of dive into some topics again today. And big shout out to Jarrett. We call him Jay. He is our producer on the back end. So he makes all of this flow. Slash that like and subscribe up. Love it. All right. So we'll go ahead and dive right into it. Let's just talk a little bit about Thanksgiving coming up, what we're doing with the family or what that looks like for you. Some things that we can kind of dive into, some things that we've learned for the holidays that we like to do to keep for me, I like to keep myself refreshed and recharged. Sometimes being with family or doing things the way that most people structure it isn't always the most energizing.
Sounds good. Yeah. Let's see. This Thanksgiving for me, I'll just be staying down in Florida. All my family's in Michigan, but I did not go to the last 2 family Thanksgivings. It was vaccine related. So my family and I have different views on that. That might be for another time. So I've just kind of got in the habit of not going back home to Michigan and just staying in Florida and doing a Thanksgiving here. So no travel for me this year, again, which is really kind of nice. The airport the day before Thanksgiving can be a little rough, especially out of Miami International. So I will just be on the road, but no travel for me this year. How about yourself?
Yeah, I am. That's interesting. I want to talk about the family. We don't have to go into that specific topic, sure. But I do want to talk about the family with you having experience in that. I'm actually flying out to Denver, Colorado, newly found girlfriend, believe it, working with Rick, and then wearing red flag shirts, somehow beautiful saint of a woman. So I'm going out there to spend some time with her and my buddy, Dr. Tim. So I'm very excited for that. And then I'll have some time with Christmas, that next holiday. We kind of prep them out a little early, spend some time with the family. My brother just bought a new house, getting ready to have baby number 2. Haven't seen my little niece in a while, and then I'll be flying out to Denver again. There's just a lot more to do there than like Lexington, Kentucky, or Indianapolis, Indiana. Like we can go skiing, do those things. So yeah, I'm very excited for that. But yeah, tell me a little bit. Let's talk about this a little bit because we had something in our family. I'm going to share a little bit on it here. But talk to me a little bit about when it comes to the holidays, something that I've seen even in the practice, and just like I live across from Costco, so I get to look out my window and see all the craziness that happens around the holidays. But one of the things that I've started seeing is the holidays can start to feel like it's supposed to be about gathering, being around people that you're appreciated with and that you appreciate. And it seems that it's kind of shifted, or maybe my experience of it's wrong or misinterpreted, but it's becoming more of this forced scenario where you have to be around certain people because you're family, and it's how it looks versus how it is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know that it's something that's been more recent. I think it's probably kind of always been this pressure cooker of insecurities that these people know about me. Everybody kind of is in their business. That's how family is. There's no way around that. But I think when someone sits down at the literal table or figurative, that these people know that they don't feel where they want to be career-wise or weight-wise, or people watching how much I'm eating or what I'm eating. And there's just a lot of sort of people feel under the microscope, I think, when they're around their family rather than this really relaxed kind of thing. I suppose some people are, but I bet more than we realize really feel like everyone's looking at me, judging me. They know my story, my skeletons, whatever it might be, and I've got to face them for 2.5 hours. And there's this anticipation and fear about it that makes people oftentimes very uncomfortable and on edge. And I think it's kind of always been like that. Maybe social media has amplified it a bit. But yeah, I think that there's definitely some sort of ramp up that people have that they kind of works them up for this day to be around their family. And it isn't the relaxed thing always that we would hope it would be.
Yeah, it's very fascinating in that way. And I think that it causes more problems than it helps from my experience of it. And maybe it's all a perception. But I know people just it's like a stressful time. In my head, it shouldn't be stressful. Like you're talking about staying in Miami and doing those. And that sounds more like a holiday than being the people that I care for being in the practice, right? People come back in more stressed. Like this doesn't make sense to me.
I think it shines a brighter light on, I saw this little video recently about how people think that people care or are more interested than they really are. If everyone could just take a minute, whether it be Thanksgiving, Christmas, the holidays, whatever it might be, and just realize that everyone has their own shit too, then I think that would really take off a layer or two of the fear and tension. Like, well, I'm worried about me. This person over here, they have A, B, and C also. So what am I worried about? And I think that's in life when we're walking around or at the family dinner table for the holidays, to just realize that not only the whole cliche, nobody's perfect, but that they've got their own shit also. And so don't worry about it because they're thinking the same thing. Someone else across from the table from you is worried if everyone's judging them in some way while you're over there worried about yourself. If everyone would just stop it and just relax and enjoy a dinner together and not have this little back theme going in the back of their head about what everyone's thinking as they eat this food and kind of get through the meal. You're getting through the meal. These are theoretically people you see once a year or maybe twice a year, and you just want to get through it. That's an interesting segue too into, and we can come back to it, having older parents, any loss with family members, things like that. You're at a dinner table with your family members that you might see twice a year, once a year, and you want to get through it. Just take off the stress jacket, let it go, and just enjoy being around the people because they've got the same thing.
That's really good insight. I like that. I think that is a big thing with family specific, and it is the non-judgment, right? I always say this, I was communicating this with my parents because we had some things come up with the holidays. And I'm like, if we're going to continue these things or have better relationships or better holidays, then the communication's got to be better. Why would people, right? It's an entitlement thing too. And it may not be all parents and stuff like that. And then they're learning too. It's their first time, right? There's a lot of that. But if there's always going to be judgment, why would people go to a place where they're judged, right? That makes zero sense. We go to a place where we feel appreciated, right? And there's a fine balance between the two. But I find that just very interesting with the holidays. But also, there's times too where the family's been there to support you. There's different things that you said. And I think that's an important thing to remember too, just with people in general, is there's so many things that people have going on. It doesn't justify bad actions, if we're going to label them bad actions or actions that don't feel good to us. It doesn't justify them. Everyone's got their own stuff going on. But I think the people that I appreciate being around the most are people that are okay talking about those, dealing with those. That way we don't always come back to the next year and we have the same pattern or loop where it's, this person's this way because they have this going on. And next year they have something else going on, but that justifies them being the way that they are. So I find that just very fascinating with the holidays as a whole.
And what a great mile marker. What a great time stamp on things. Let's just say it's something easy like weight. Let's say there's 10 to 15 to 20 pounds that you want to lose. You're sitting there at Thanksgiving. It's the most eating holiday, right? Probably more than Christmas. And you say to yourself, by this time next Christmas, I'm going to be this weight or I'm going to be this fit, or whatever it might be. So, okay, I feel a type of way sitting at the table with my family members because they know they're looking at me. I'm looking at me. Okay, look at you. That's all right. By next year, hit that number, whatever that might be in weight, fitness, however the scale is. Hit that, bottle that fear a little bit, use it, as motivation to get to whatever it might be. It might be work, it might be finances, or in this example with eating and weight. Get to by this time next year, I'm gonna and do it. So I think that can be actually kind of motivational, properly packaged. I think it can push you in the right direction, which isn't a bad thing.
Yeah, that's super good. Yeah, that is the interesting part too. I don't know if this is, we talk about health a lot too. For me, one of the hardest things with a holiday is not only that aspect of it, which is a part of health, emotional and mental side of it, but was also like, I'm not sure if your family is very health driven that way too, but mine wasn't. They're quote unquote healthy, right? But the foods that we're eating, very unhealthy on Thanksgiving. And so I had to transition and say, like, I'm not eating these foods. Like, I will bring my own or this. And it took like a 4-year period for like my mom to understand that. It's like, no, mom, like your cooking tastes great. Like there's nothing wrong with your cooking. It's just terrible for me. And I'm more committed to being healthy than to eating a bunch of pies and cookies and stuff just laced with like creamer and stuff like that too. So cream cheese, right? Buffalo chicken dip, all that stuff that's tastes good, not good for us.
Yeah. Or if there ever is a time that you want to enjoy some of these traditional things, the pumpkin pie, I don't want to get too down the rabbit hole of what to eat and what not to eat, but enjoy. It's a holiday. Like if all days, like take that holiday. If the rest of the year or most of the year, whatever it is, that you are on your game as far as health, wellness, nutrition, then yeah, have the pumpkin pie with the Cool Whip on top and have the stuffing. Like enjoy it. It's just one time a year. Whoever makes what the best in the family and you're enjoying their stuffing or their whatever it might be, have it. It doesn't matter if you have it that day. If the rest of the days you're on your game and enjoy with the family on a holiday, but get back to it Friday, Saturday, don't keep it going and eating bad.
That's the key part. One day, the one day.
Yeah.
It's when you stack from Thanksgiving all the way through the new year of bad days. That's where it gets dangerous.
Yeah. That sugar is a topic we should definitely hit sometime. Once you flip that switch, that sugar switch, I'm pretty good about it, but I've been to a wedding or something and had some of that wedding cake and I land, back wherever I'm living at the time. And I'm like looking at the Starbucks for an oatmeal cookie. Like it's got me, I've got to like detox from it. It's a real thing. People talk about cigarettes being addictive. At some point we should talk more about sugar and how it really gets a hold of your soul. And so it's a hard momentum to break, to kind of detox from that sugar that your body will start to crave once it has some. Even a day or two can really set you back. And you got to realize, all right, I got to detox off of this. So got some tips and things on that too. We can come back to another time. Yeah. One thing about the family dynamic is, and I think it's probably a good segue, Dr. Mateo, is especially being around some of your older family members. Like my parents are in their mid-late 70s now. And my dad just came down to visit from Michigan. We went to a Miami Heat game, kind of a pre-Thanksgiving get together and spend some quality time. Is, if you have elderly family members, I think it's really important to think to yourself, how many more times will I spend any kind of weekend with my dad, or really have just some time to just talk with him about his life or things when we were kids, things like that. I've shared with you that my brother passed away at the age of 42 of cancer. And so really it's kind of on my mind about how time with family and conversations that you think you'll have one day, telling them you love them or whatever it might be, not just these little words that we want to say to impact somebody, but just to kind of really go deep with somebody and spend that time. How much more do you have? So I think it's a really important thing to keep on your sort of desktop with family and we get frustrated with our parents, and there's all kinds of other things we could talk about. They don't know how to work technology, or they ask you the same question, or they're kind of preach. And, there's a lot to that. Sometimes I kind of feel like they're projecting their life onto us. Oh, mom, there's a lot of that, but to really kind of appreciate, and while they may be viewed as nagging or kind of harping and hovering, if you can kind of flip it to ask questions and things that you may always want to know, or have conversations that'll really mean a lot to you, what are they going to say no when you ask them some important stuff? So I think that's an important thing to kind of keep with you, especially with elderly family members or friends.
That's a good insight. There's always the one of our common friends, Ronnie Doss, right? First day, last day. First day is you have a curiosity. If you're dropped on planet Earth without any memory or whatever, you have curiosity for what everything is. And then last day is the urgency of you don't get another day, is having that urgency. And I think you have a great perspective with that, sharing the story of your brother and having that perspective on it. The thing that's very interesting with this is we can dive into this. I think this will be a good spot to dive a little bit deeper. Is one of the things for me, right? Well, it's probably for all of us, right? We all have what we would say messed up parents in their own way, right? I always find it interesting how, quote unquote, and I'm air quotes here, bad parents have good kids sometimes, right? And quote unquote, good parents have bad kids. And so I was having this conversation with my dad. We're talking about the holidays and some things that came up. And I was like, Dad, do you know any set of kids that want to be exactly like their parents? Like, do you live your life exactly like your parents? The answer is no, right? So I'm like, if we want to have conversations, you're not entitled to everything in my life, right? Especially as your kids become adults in that sense. So us having communication, I said, this is what this looks like moving forward. We can communicate about this stuff, but if you're going to sit here and force beliefs on me and vice versa, I'm going to say, well, Mom, Dad, you need to be okay with this. Like, these are not healthy conversations if we can't move forward with disagreement on these topics. And so I think it's very interesting is having the urgency of last day of this may be the last one that we get, but also leaning in, being the adult, right? Most people, my experience, most people blame their parents. And it comes back to something we talked about in that first podcast is responsibility, right? Is like, why can't I be the adult in this thing? We're both adults. So why can't I ask them the question? Why can't I encourage better communication? Why can't I do these things? And instead of what I have realized for myself is I projected a lot onto my parents of like, oh, this is how they'll always be, even though I never use those words, is then I just avoid conversations or avoid spending time around them because I'm projecting onto them that this is what I expect to get back from them versus just leaning in and having a conversation. What would you say? So you have your parents that are in their 70s, you've lost a family member, your brother, and those, what would you say as far as the balance of the urgency of having that view of like, hey, this may be their last one, but also being very blunt and direct of who you are and your standards of life and certain things that just aren't acceptable?
It definitely is a balance, and I think we're oftentimes very hard on ourselves and we're hard on the people that we love because we can be. And I feel like, let's say 80 to 90% of what they're saying, what they're giving is love and pouring, and it comes from a place of care and just concern. And how many people in your life, if you said, I need you here tomorrow, would be there? How many people would say, I need you to get on a flight tonight? And my parents would do that for sure. They absolutely would. My mom and my dad, both in their late 70s, I said, Mom, Dad, I need you here tomorrow. They would do it. With that, I might take a little bit of nagging or, honey, are you okay? Are you eating enough? Some of these kind of things are lighter. There's definitely some heavier topics too. But I think it's cliche, but you do have to take the little bit of bad, let's say, if it's a little bit, could be a lot, with the good. And it comes from a place of caring. I heard this interesting quote. It was either we work through our issues or our kids will. And I feel like working through those issues in order to be able to really have a good perspective on them so that you don't pass it along to your kids or as little bad as possible. We're labeling it good and bad. I don't know if that's fair.
Yeah, it's air quotes. It's up to interpretation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Say that quote one more time for me.
That either we work through our issues or our kids will. So if you don't work through some of the things that you have and you put them onto your kids and it affects your kids, then you're just passing along this baggage that they have to unpack and they have to sort through. But if you could just work through it yourself, they'll probably have some of their own. But then you're just kind of dumping that onto them.
Because they say with kids too, just a real quick interjection here, is it's often not what's taught, it's what's caught. What they see is what they take with them. So those traumas or those relationship qualities move on with them.
Yeah, I've said we build the wall. If we can build this little wall around them and nothing's going to be perfect, there's still going to be life and things are going to get at them that they'll have to deal with. But hopefully it's none of my things that I'm carrying and just kind of pouring onto them. You ought to and when I'm back in my, because that's sort of what's happening to us, right? You mentioned what our parents lived by and how they did it. It's probably our grandparents that put it on our parents that are putting it on us. So if we're talking about, let's just say marriage, when our grandparents were getting married, how long ago was that? And so all these adages, you hear the picket fence and the house and the picket fence and the, this rocking chair on your porch or I don't know, whatever, with a 30-year mortgage that's paid off, like all these sort of things that then carries forward possibly 100 years later. Think how different the world is. And yet we carry along this, like what I ought to by now, or these traditional things that we try to stick to. And we really shouldn't have this pressure on ourselves because it isn't just our parents, it's their parents that put it on them, that put it on us. Are you going to put it on your kids? It's not going to be another generation passed down of all of these you must things. You don't want to go to college? All right, well, let's talk about it. There wasn't a choice. You were going to college. You got a good education, you got a job, you went to college. And if you didn't, you're just done at high school. These days, yeah, I'm done at high school. I'm going to start a business. I'm going to work hard and wake up early every day and do that. So I think that family thing is really important. To answer your question directly, Doc, to just take the good, realize their intentions are usually pretty good. And the rest, you always have to do that. You have friends that are like that and just kind of, all right, I'm not really going to. That's not for me. The other good stuff, yes.
It's like the art of war, know thyself and then know thy quote unquote enemy. And it's not that they're the enemy in this scenario, but or you have certain friends, like there may be certain people that you call for business, but you're not going to ask relationship advice to, and vice versa. But I do think that this is an interesting thing that you brought up. And I was thinking about this the other day, very ironically, right? As you're talking about this generational thing, right? The rocking chair and that back when gas was 25 cents, those things. And what's very fascinating about this, and I was thinking about this, is because kind of our generation we're kind of this middle ground between the generation above us that was taught that way, and then the younger generation now that doesn't want to go to college because they can go out, create a business online, like do these things. The thing that was very fascinating to me, if we're going to quote unquote talk about the system, right? How the system's not set up for us to succeed, all these things. I was like, what a brilliant way of engraving into the older generation, which was a reality also, is going to college, getting a job, but then changing the economic circumstances where you can go create because of the internet and stuff like that. But yet this generation still thinks that old method is effective when college now, like I forget what it was for like chiropractors that were like back in the heyday, right? Like for them to go to chiropractic school was maybe like a couple $1,000s. It's like now it's like $250,000. I'm like very different. You get to walk out and create. Cost of living is different, and that it's like now if you buy a decent house, you're at like $200,000 plus. And so I just think all of that is super fascinating when we talk about, and that's the whole point of the podcast is disruption, right? That we have these systems, we can blame the system, right? Or whatever systems we want, story, however you want to word it. We can blame that, or we can create a disruption, which starts with responsibility, right? What are we going to do? We're at choice. How do we make a decision to change that? And that's really the value of bringing someone like Rick on here is those experiences. Is it offers you, if you're paying attention, it'll offer you the insights to have tools to go create that. But what are kind of your thoughts? I know that was a lot there, but what are your thoughts on specifically that model and then how things are transitioning? How do we bridge that gap, or what are some ways that we can do that? I know I'm not expecting you to give the answer that fits all here.
Well, it usually comes back to balance, just like with the diet and exercise and eating the good foods at Thanksgiving and enjoying it. There is some balance where to feel this pressure and the thumb of grandparents and parents kind of down on your forehead about what you must do, whether it be college or, I remember it was like, you should be a doctor or a lawyer. Those were like these, you'd be a doctor or a lawyer, you'll be successful. And I know lots that aren't. But I think, again, it's that balance. There's a lot of things these days, and we could talk about this generation that started with like 8th place trophies and given too much autonomy, for another topic. I I believe that 7-year-olds shouldn't be choosing their own gender yet, you know, for another day. So there is this like little bit like, hey, you know, let's keep on this balance of stick to some traditional things are probably pretty good. You're a boy, you're a girl, whether or not you're playing with a ball or a doll, let kids be kids. With you need to go to college, be a doctor or a lawyer, you won't be successful, and get a 30-year mortgage, pay it off, and sit on a rocking chair when you retire and get a gold watch one day. All right, how do we find the middle? You don't have to just eat celery and grapefruit in order to be healthy. But also, you know, day to day, if you can stay away from the fried foods and the processed things and sugar. So like anything, I think it's that balance is really, really hard to find. People tend to kind of gravitate to the extremes for some reason. I'd love to talk to you more about that. Why do we gravitate to these extremes? But somewhere in the middle, I think, is where the win is, and finding that balance that works for a productive career, life, health, parenting, childhood, etc. So that's where it is right there.
I love that. Yeah. There was, I got 2 things on this. I kind of want to dive deeper on this if you're open for that.
Sure.
I said people love being right about how wrong they are and wrong about how right they are. It's like it's a mind game. We love being right, and we could be right about how wrong we are or wrong about how right we are. Instead of this, and it kind of comes back to what we're talking about with family and stuff too. It's coming back to this place of non-judgment, right? Someone else doesn't always have to lose for us to win. For me personally, I believe if business is done correctly, that both parties are winning, right? And another thing that was interesting, I saw this Instagram post that said if the little 10 by 10 section at the grocery store is called the health food section, what's the rest of the store?
Yeah, the middle aisles, right?
Yeah. And it's pausing people and like, well, if everything around me is trying to kill me, right? Because you can go down that whole gauntlet, but it's understanding and layering it back one step at a time, because the system is not set up for us to be healthy. And there's so many examples of that, right? I was reading something the other day. It says alcohol legal, cigarettes legal. And again, there's no judgment. It's your life. If you want to do these things, right, you should be free to choose what you want. And then it says processed foods legal, raw milk illegal. You have to buy a cow share to get raw milk, right? And it's all this stuff that can be healthy for us. And I believe personally, the more that I'm learning is usually if I'm getting it from a grocery store, it has low health value, right? If I can go directly to a farmer, directly get it from a source, then I know what's going into it. Like, and there's these things called greenwashing, where it's like, if you go to like Whole Foods, for example, and you want to get a steak, you say, I want a grass-fed steak. There's grass-fed, and the last week of life gets grain-fed versus being fully grass-fed from start to finish. So there's all these things that you have to be educated or informed on. And one of the big things that I like to talk on is labels, right? Labels are just labels, right? They're not they should be taken at face value, because it's like we've all seen all natural, right? And it's just got crap in it. But I do think it's very interesting when it comes to health, looking at those things and being informed on those. But what are some things, I know we talked about sugar a little bit and those things, and even from the mindset of even creating, for me, I'm so biased towards health because I've seen, let's kind of transition to this. I know I kind of went all over there, but with health, because the reason why I think health is fundamental and the most important is because, and I know you can speak to this and I can too, is people that don't have their health, the rest doesn't really matter. If you have all the money and time in the world but don't have your health, right? And this is kind of the old school pattern, is people spend their life neglecting their health, accumulating the wealth with the time that they have, and then they try to buy their health back at the end, and it's too late, versus being proactive, pursuing your health every day, getting better. There's always the next level, and then accumulating the wealth and time. That way, if you retire or whatever that looks like, but it's this saying that I use is adding life to our years, and then in return, hopefully getting years to our life, because we really don't know how long we're going to be here. But if the quality of our life each day is so high and vibrant, I think that's way more worth it, and it probably will add those years to your life.
Agreed. And the labels is such a great topic. I mean, look at the labels on some of your favorite foods, any snacks. Look at all the things you can't pronounce and certainly can't spell. You're eating that on a daily basis, these words. And I think because the box is green, or there's a little leaf on it. We think that it's safe. And there's all these chemicals in there that our body constantly has to process. So yeah, there's definitely a lot to that. Doc, there was a lot there, specifically the question that you had about the health. Like, hit me one more time with that.
Yeah. So like for people looking into health, I know we kind of talk about it, and I have some biases, and I always tell people from the get-go it's biased, but for me, it's always defining what health is. But what are some things like, and I know, for example, I'm going to come back to your brother for a second, but you saw your brother, the value of this may be like, each person's last time at that. But what are some things that when it comes to health, like obviously I believe it starts in the mind, but what are some things that like when Rick decided to get healthy or be healthier, what are some things that you started with that were fundamental to you being as healthy as you are?
One thing that was big is soda. I loved it. I love Diet Coke. There's no calories. It's better with pizza. It's better with a burger. And it was just soda. And then one day I just thought, like, what's all this brown syrup that I'm drinking? I don't even know what's in it. I couldn't tell you to this day. And it just didn't make sense to me anymore that I'm constantly drinking this delicious bubbly stuff. And it was diet. There was no sugar in it. Arguably worse with all the chemicals that sweeten it that aren't sugar, but for another day. And it just kind of clicked. Like, what am I eating? I used to go to these chiropractic seminars, and there'd be thousands or north of 1,000 people, and not a single Coke can there. Everyone's drinking water, and it just sort of, what are these chemicals that I'm just running through my system? And with my brother, he used to talk about how eating organic was really expensive. And then later on, these drugs and all these different chemos and all these different things was billed to the insurance, which was a whole other topic, but really expensive. And his time was expensive. Instead of working, he's sitting in some CAT scan tube looking for tumors. They're shooting him full of stuff that lights up on a machine, and he's claustrophobic in a tube. And I don't know that it was because of his lifestyle. We could talk about that more. But people think that it's expensive, or that they don't have the time to do meal prep. They're just going to grab something out of the vending machine or some fast food that's less expensive. And really, it's very short-sighted, like you said, the mind. You may be saving a few dollars on that meal or a few minutes, which I'm not sure what people are doing with that time. So you didn't grill some chicken or salmon or beef or whatever it is on your home grill and make some rice and take it to work, which took you how long? Instead, you were at work, grab something out of the vending machine, bag of chips or a Danish or something that's not good for you. Like, what are you really saving? What are you doing with that time?
Mm-hmm.
Gary Vee says, are you watching a whole series of some show you don't care about? Like, what are you really doing with that time? Going down some YouTube rabbit hole, watching people on skateboards fall off of rails? Like, what are you doing with this time you saved by not meal prepping? Anyway, definitely mental. When I saw what my brother was going through, and I realized, will I live longer or shorter if I'm pumping all these chemicals through me? Soda was number one, processed foods. I used to love Subway sandwiches. It was turkey. It's a turkey sandwich. That bread, that was another big one. When I saw them peeling off these white looking like bleached turkey things, and I'm getting extra meat, no mayo, just olive oil, and that bread smells amazing. Still to this day, I walk by a Subway. What nasty toxic chemical do they put in there? Because it smells delicious. And then sheets of turkey? Does that even make, viewers, does sheets of turkey make sense to you? Just sheets of turkey and this kind of thing? No, that's not food. It's not food. So definitely the mental side.
Yeah, it's so fascinating to me. And a lot of the stuff that you're talking about too, even the soda was definitely the hardest one for me, but it comes back to like sugar and stuff like that, high fructose corn syrup. Like, we could go into this. But it's just pausing, and you're talking about time. We talked about this in the episode 0, right? Our origin episode of being busy versus producing, right? Too busy to be healthy until we're unhealthy. Then all of a sudden, right? Then we're very committed to that. And so the question that I always propose is, what do I think I'm worth? Right? Over the next 10 years, what do I think I'm worth? And then you could put a financial number to it. You could put a relationship number to it, the quality of relationships and those things. Okay, so my body will produce X amount in this time. So it is worth, right? You don't put whatever it is, and let it into like a Ferrari. You put like the premium or whatever goes in there. Like you're putting the nicest stuff into that Ferrari if you want it to last and produce the way it's designed to produce. And I think so much of that is true for our bodies. But usually the question that I like to come back to on this too is we're talking about these health choices, and there's great examples in our life. And you're talking about food, which is definitely a big one. One of the things I always ask people is, how do you know if you're healthy or not? And people don't ever ask this question to themselves. They don't define health. And this is, I think, very important. So I want to share it here. I do this to every patient in our practice is, how do you know if you're healthy or not, right? We always do the example of the medicine cabinet behind your mirror. Are you healthier the more full that gets or the emptier it gets? I'm like, well, the emptier. I'm like, but what are our choices? What are our lived actions showing? So health, and my definition of this, and it helps me filter good choices, is the body's ability to adapt. That keyword, adapt, right? People that aren't adapting aren't here anymore, right? The body's ability to adapt to physical, chemical, and emotional stresses, and the body's ability to recognize itself from the environment, which covers immunity. And so I think it's very important to have a filter for that so we can raise our body's adaptive healing potential. But the other part is, and this is what we kind of finished on, is the mind, right? People that are in toxic relationships, probably not going to be healthy. People eating toxic foods that are messing up the hormones, the organs of the body, probably not going to be as healthy, right? The physical stress is typically what most people go to, right? If you're in a car accident, things like that. But so the shift was the shift really your brother that caused that? The shift in your health to start looking at these things is what I heard. Is that correct?
That is definitely the cherry on top. I was already eating healthy, going to the gym. I wanted to look good on the outside and did, but I was using all the terrible sweeteners that are yellow and blue and pink in the sweetener thing at the restaurant, and just all this chemical and diet. And on the inside, I wasn't doing my best. I definitely wasn't. I thought, how can I just get that much better? A recent podcast clip that I sent you, Doc, was just be 5% better, which is adapting.
Mm-hmm.
Consistency.
Yeah.
If you can't be 5% better, 10% on and on forever, don't eat great for a week. What's the point? You're just chopping food and making salad and doing your meal prep for a week. He also said in the podcast, if you're in shape like 6 times in your life, who cares?
Yeah,
you got in shape 6 times? Awesome. But are you healthy and living longer and getting a better quality of your life? You get one. So these are some of the things that just kind of started to really kind of set in. Maybe later I realized, look, if I'm in my late 40s or whatever the time was, I want to just be as healthy and feel good and be active and all those kind of simple things. But the adapting, but the consistency, you got to stick to it. That's why you can eat whatever you want on Thanksgiving. If you adapt and you're consistent the rest of the year, that day doesn't even matter. So don't just get healthy 6 times in your life. And you don't have to jump to be this gym rat. I think people think, like I said, they've got to be eating celery and grapefruit and just this rabbit lifestyle, which is not the case. You don't need to be a meathead in the gym. Whatever fitness, weight, workout thing works for you. And just be 5% better and just move the needle from here to here and see if you don't just feel better. And it catches on. Once you get a little momentum, hey, wow, this shirt fits better. My suit fits better. My dress feels better. Whatever it is, it's contagious. And then it has a momentum that I think is easier to go. But the adapting and the consistency is really, really where it starts to take hold, and you're another person. You're a healthier person.
Yeah. It's hard to explain to people until they actually physically do it or experience it.
I think friends, give me 60 days. I got a friend named Tim. Every year around the 2nd of January, he's telling me about his food processor and what he's going to do, what he's going to just give me 60 days of doing it. Watch how you feel better, and you'll want to stick to it. Right. People torture themselves for some small amount of time. It's not sustainable. They don't stick to it. Don't even do that. Do something you can do. Do something that you could do.
Right. That's so key. And you said that, and you alluded to that earlier too with soda, right? That's one thing. Most people do the elephant, right? Let's eat it all at once. I'm going to get this, 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 and this. And when they don't get that, which was from our previous podcast too, is not, don't be upset with missing the goal. Be upset with missing the actions, right? There's a difference, right? If you're doing the actions, then and you miss the goal, that's okay, right? But then you can reset the goal and do that. But I think that's what I heard from you is the small thing. And then the consistency part, I kind of want to lay this out too, is what you're saying with the consistency is really the consistency of change, right? Of not being the same every day. In a small percentage, it's changing small things. But when you look in the mirror, and maybe you can speak on this, I know for me over the last year, I stayed consistently in shape, right? There's times where I've been in shape, fall off, get back in shape, and did the song and dance. But this past year, I stayed consistently in shape. But there's something about the psychology or the physiology of the body that when you look in the mirror and you like physically what you see, you like mentally, spiritually, whatever the words are for you, what you see, it does something for you. And I think that's like one of the most empowering things that you could ever do for yourself. And if you want to say that you're such a selfless, I'll use this word, selfless, or you just want to help people, number one thing that you can start with is helping yourself in those categories, in my biased opinion. But I think
the fixes are way smaller than people realize. Do the math. Do the math. If after dinner, someone sits down and watches their Netflix series or whatever show that they like and they watch or binge watch or whatever it is, and they eat some snacks, whatever that might be, there's a number of calories taken in, and it can really be this simple. Instead, just make these little trades. Instead of the Danish in the morning, crack 2 eggs. Instead of sitting there and watching your Netflix show and knocking down however many snacks, by the way, everybody, how much is in a serving? Keep a note. I like when it says like, oh, there's 200 calories in a serving, but a serving, there's like 18 servings in a box. Everybody, we can do this with cereal, right? Like there's how many servings in this cereal box? No, there's not. There's 3 servings in this cereal box. Anyway, there's a number of calories in. Got it. And you're not, of course, like moving or burning any calories. Skip the Netflix series and the snacks, have a glass of water, and go for a walk for 20 minutes. There's a huge swing of the calories that you didn't take in and that you burnt. Do that and watch what happens. These little trades, Netflix for a walk, snacks for a water, and see if that doesn't start to just move the needle. It will, especially if you do it consistently.
I love that. And it's the pain of being stuck. Like people complaining, this is where I get really frustrated in health. And this is where I'm encouraged to lean in, because I'm either going to sit here, especially as a chiropractor, we see people so frequently coming back and forth. It's like, I'm either going to hear the same story every day, or we're going to lean in and have some real conversations of it's either the pain. Are you happy with where you're at? If the answer is no, then something has got to change. You can't keep doing the same things expecting a different outcome. We'll probably go over this on every single episode. That is the definition of insanity, right? So at some point, something's got to change if you want change. And so for me, it's always the way that I look at it to simplify it is it's either the pain, the struggle, whatever the word is, whatever the emotional attachment is to being where I'm at, or the pain to get where I desire to be. And they're both going to be hard. They're both going to be difficult. Cool. If we can accept that up front, then it's just what actions do we want to invest into in between. So, but I do think those are key, easy, fundamental tips that you're giving people that they seem easy, but things that are easy to do are also easy not to do. Reading a label, looking at how many calories are going in, looking at the actions that we're doing every day in those facets. Is there anything else you'd like to add on that? I kind of want to give a little preface here. Sorry, not a preface, but a preface here before we transition towards the close in the next episode, which I'm excited because I have some ideas already based off today's conversation. But anything that you'd like to add on the holidays, family, any encouragement?
No, I think what a great feeling to be able to be in great shape and eating all the food you want at Thanksgiving. And people will ask you, how do you do it? Where does the food go? Look at you. Look at you eat like a horse and you look like that. Like, yep, it's not what I do here and today. It's what I do every other day or most other days. Is really what a great feeling. Yeah. More pie, please. More stuff.
Must be easy is the phrase.
Yeah.
Easy. I'm like, come hang out with me the other 364.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And just the family thing with would they get on a plane for you? These are people that may be judging, they care. Ask them questions, learn from them, and then have your own little filter where you can, okay, that I'll get rid of, this I'll keep. You can keep your judgment about my career, college, whatever it is, but thanks for the story about what you went through. That I'll keep. There's got to be this little throw that away, keep this kind of scenario that goes on at the family stuff, and have your own agenda. I'm going to learn something from my opinionated old uncle, because he has been through some stuff. He can keep his opinions to himself, but I'd like to hear some stories about how he built that landscaping business or whatever it is. Like, that is interesting. Let's talk about the stuff I'm interested in.
I love that. That's going to be a great segue into how I wanted to close this anyways, of being responsible. You're going to hear that word a lot, responsible, right? Is we're a part of our Thanksgiving, our Christmas experience. We're a part of, I'll come to this here at the end, dating or whatever relationships that we have, friendships, we could look at it the same way. We're a part of those, right? So if we're a part of those, what would a good experience look like? So what can we do to make that a better experience? Asking questions, which I know is one of the things, right? And we'll transition this. I'll kind of set this up for the next podcast. Is even in dating, one of the things, and I was initially talking to Rick, and Rick has great advice, insights, tools is what I call them. They're tools to use. Just good to have a strategy or tools that I can use that when I'm on dates and stuff to say, oh, like, hey, like I can make this a better experience by this if I want it. And one of it is, especially doing the apps and stuff like that, is when I'd go to meet someone for coffee or something, if it was, they look nothing like their picture, right? I don't know if any of y'all have ever had one of those happen. And I go in there and I used to just walk right out and just send them a text like, hey, you're not who you said you were. And I'm like, hey, it is what it is. But Rick encouraged me that, hey, even if that happens, what could you learn though by sitting down with that person? Like, why would they want to do that? And those types of things. So I think that was a really good insight. And I know I'm excited to go into dating as a whole. The reason why I love talking about dating with Rick or with you specifically is not just the dating aspect. It's so applicable to business relationships, friendships, those things. It's just good context for relationships as a whole, which I'm sure anyone that's listening to this or watching this would agree that we all desire to have better relationships with self, with others, and all of that. So I am very excited to dive into that. Is there anything you'd like to add on that before we just close up the episode? Things that you're excited to share on those topics?
No, I look forward to it when we get into it. I don't have any real hitch like dating trick things, say this, do that, send the flowers, or it isn't that. It's just kind of, there's often like a bright side to things or some value that you can take. I was talking about the opinionated uncle in the family scenario, but with dating or just different relationships, what are the odds that, there's just not going to be a lot of people that are perfect for you. And even the word perfect is something I would try to stay away from. But in that scenario where you meet up with someone and they don't look like what their pictures look like, or they're just very different, there's still something that kind of fascinates me. Like, wow, you took pictures and posted them from clearly years ago and you wanted to meet and you thought I'd be okay with, like, let's talk. Who are you? While we're in front of each other and we're at the same coffee shop, just like, there's got to be something else interesting in there. There must be something else interesting. Let's just talk over a coffee. Nothing to lose. So tell me about yourself. And I think that even when it's not a good business fit, dating fit, family, even a workout that isn't for you, there's something to learn from it. And even from what could be looked at as negative or bad, there's still a lot of good that can come of it. Just look for it. Just pick that out and take that little gem in your pocket, and we'll be finding more of those gems and things that can really move you forward and give you more wisdom and more experience, even if you don't have to really know the person or really do the whole business or the whole lifestyle or the whole workout. You can take little things from it that gets to stay with you and that you can learn from and be better.
I love it. I'm super excited for this. I know we're getting momentum going with each episode, but super excited to dive in on this and share that part of, I know I've had this experience with you, but share that part with people that are watching. So I know it's going to be so beneficial. But if you guys are watching this on YouTube, make sure you go to we have this on Apple and Spotify. I'm working to get it on Amazon too. And if you're listening to this, you can like and subscribe at the Teo TV, all lowercase. But we will see you on the next episode. Have a great Thanksgiving, everyone, and great holiday season. Thanks, Rick. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. If you're on YouTube, please like and subscribe so you never miss a disrupted video.
And if you're listening to this on the podcast format, make sure to follow or like and subscribe as well. That way you never miss a podcast drop. And if there's a friend that would benefit from this, please feel free to share that with them. And we'll see you on the next episode.